Hi, I'm Mark, and on my channel I talk about UK politics and Brexit from an outside view. Although I do know the UK from the inside as well, so don't worry. The new British Labour government sees little financial room for manoeuvre after an initial audit. Prime Minister Starmer's office said an assessment of public finances showed that Britain was broke and broken. It also said that the defeated Conservative government had made significant funding commitments for this financial year without knowing where the money would come from. Starmer's office spoke of chaos that populist politics had caused in the economy and the public service. The Conservative Party rejected the accusation. It said the alleged black hole in public coffers was just a pretext for planned tax increases. The last time the British overwhelmingly voted for a Labour government over the Tories in 1997, the general mood in the country was so euphoric that Tony Blair was able to rave the next day that a whole new dawn had dawned. His successor Keir Starmer, the new British Prime Minister since July 5th, is known to be a more sober man. And times are different. Nevertheless, the extent of his election victory is comparable. With 411 seats, he's only 7 seats away from Blair's landslide victory at the time. And that means a majority with which he can govern powerfully over the next 5 years and shape a real new beginning for Great Britain if he intends to. And while the EU is struggling with the rapid rise of right-wing populist parties, the British now seem to be on the opposite path, leaving their populist base behind, at least for the time being, and that's the good news here. A political landslide victory is at the same time a kind of victory in which the foundations of the political landscape that were previously believed to be secure begin to falter. And in Starmer's case, this also applies to his own base. His defensive strategy of consistently pushing the Labour Party from the left fringe to the political centre without regard to losses, that has brought him heavy losses, especially among young left-wing voters. And instead of the expected 40%, Starmer only won with 34% of the total vote. In the British majority voting system, a clear election victory was still possible. David Cameron never achieved more than 36.9% of the total vote and is by no means illegitimate. Voters know their electoral system and also vote tactically. But the result is also a clear indicator that the British were primarily concerned with voting out the Tories in this election. Euphoria for Labour itself was clearly limited, which is why Starmer now has to earn the trust of the voters. A factor that makes the already enormous challenges of his upcoming term in office seem even more daunting. And that is the less good news for Labour after the election victory. On the other hand, Starmer promised exactly that he would prove to the British that he could repair the country if they gave him the chance. Nothing more, nothing less. And he got that chance. His sober, visionless election campaign seemed to many centrist voters to be exactly the right antidote to the chaotic clown show of the Tories since Brexit. And if you take the first days of the new British government as a harbinger of what may come, then it looks as if Starmer's plan could succeed. And that's what brings us back to the good news. When Starmer gave his inaugural speech in Downing Street the day after the election, even many of the British who had not voted for him were pleasantly surprised, because he promised right at the start that he would also and above all serve them. A very different tone than in previous years. Competence and service to the country and the voters, instead of constant lies and sham battles of the Tories who have drifted into right-wing populism. These were Starmer's core promises in his speech. Or, as he himself put it, the era of performative bluster is over. From now on we will only feature quietly in your life. But who is this Starmer who is so soberly announcing the return of political reason? The new British Prime Minister is above all a man who, unlike his predecessors Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, believes in democratic institutions, public broadcasting, the separation of powers and the rule of law. As Director of Public Prosecutions, a kind of British Attorney General, he became known for his tough methodical approach whenever he faced major problems. His biographer Thomas Baldwin once described Starmer's approach in such cases: he takes one step forward and stops, one step to the left and he stops, one step back, 2 steps to the right and he stops again. It looks strange, it looks inelegant, it's confusing, but he's crossing a minefield, and that is the best way to get to the other side. At the same time, Starmer can be ruthless strategic. In just 2 years, he transformed the Labour Party, which had moved far to the left under Jeremy Corbyn, into a strictly disciplined social democratic centre-left party with patriotic undertones, which made it electable even for conservative Britons who were disappointed with the Tories. Anyone who did not go along with it was expelled from the party without discussion, most notably Jeremy Corbyn himself. Whatever political assessment one may make of this maneuver, Starmer has proven that he can solve complex tasks in large institutions quickly and relatively quietly. His cabinet, which he presented on the weekend after his election victory, is actually made up of experts again. That means mostly people who know what they are talking about and who seriously intend to tackle the country's problems under pressure. A completely unusual sight after the last few years, but apparently welcome. In an initial survey a few days after the election, Starmer's popularity ratings in the country shot up by an astonishing 14 percentage points. Competence seems to be sexy again in Britain, and yet the challenges are enormous, and it is not yet clear how Starmer intends to tackle them in concrete terms. By ruling out a Brexit reversal, he has been blocked from the direct path to urgently needed economic growth, and he has not yet been able to explain how he intends to finance the nation's reconstruction. A collapsed health system, overcrowded prisons, a dilapidated state school system. Fixing all of this takes time and above all a lot of money, which, however, is simply not available after Brexit and the pandemic. A large part of Labour's programme will therefore initially depend on what can be done without money. Whether the announced creation of legal certainty for investors in the areas of wind power, solar energy and housing, or the establishment of an industrial strategy council, including the hope that all of this will motivate and attract domestic and foreign investors in large numbers. It is still too early to say whether this can succeed and whether the British will have the patience in the medium term to follow Starmer's old-fashioned slow drilling of thick boards permanently, even if there are expected setbacks. But there's certainly a danger that this will not be the case. Starmer's election victory is not a final rejection of right-wing populism, but rather a kind of breathing space after which the madness of the Brexit years can break out again, and that at any time. So I had to give him some, as we in German would say, advanced laurels. But we will see if he can bring anything of his promises. It was a good start in terms of performance, but if it is a good start in terms of results, that remains to be seen. It's surprising enough that from all people, have to talk well about a social democratic government. I wouldn't do that here in my country. And I know that many Brexiteers will come with the newest reports on Germany and the negative growth of 0.1%. But all the commentators here in Germany agree with me that this is absolutely homemade by our government. If you look at the Eurozone overall, just to mention Spain, and with their unemployment having a growth rate of 0.8% at the last month, there you can see the Eurozone is doing really, really well. The only one that's not doing really well is Germany, and that's homemade. So everyone who wants to use the German numbers as any sign for Brexit and for the good of Brexit, you can already forget that. That's why I built it into this video right at the end. But if you want to know more, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.